Hello, intrepid adventurers, and welcome to another episode of Aiding Your Game, a small web series where we're going to be discussing bringing game aids into your tabletop RPGs. So, before we get down to it, I just wanted to cover the subjects for today. We're going to be talking about player handouts or group party handouts, as well as some atmospheric game aids to bring to the table. So, let's get to it. Welcome back. Last week we talked a lot about the campaign binder, some of the game aids that were in that binder, as well as starting points for campaigns. Today I wanted to talk a little bit deeper with that in how to start your campaign with simple game aids, as well as cover some tabletop game aids that don't necessarily play into your game but help set that atmosphere. So, in the campaign binder last week, we saw three kind of handout pieces. There was a regional map, a town map, and then a random game aid for the story that tied into those maps. One thing I want to call out that I didn't last week that I probably should have is if the game master or DM is not going to be retaining these game aids, you want to make sure you have a copy, because if a player forgets it, if they lose it, you want to be able to reference back to it or have it as a tie-in for future adventures. So regardless of the game world you're playing, it could be anything from Star Wars to Dungeons and Dragons, you want to make sure that any of the game aids that you have and create or purchase and use, you're either taking a photo on your phone, quick and easy way to do it, making a copy, or retaining it in your binder. Of course, making sure that it is available for the players to reference back to whenever they need. So let's talk a little bit about that third piece, the player handout. So I've got an example here with me that we'll reference for today. This is a game aid for one of the campaign binders. You can see it's got Dwarven script on it, and it's a map. On the map, there is a curiously red area here. The script calls out the areas of interest to the river, the plains, and a noticeable mountain peak. The red curious area here goes back into the Dwarven script. Again, this is a fun way if someone speaks Dwarven in their background or through their any comprehend languages or spells such as that. Having the decipher able to hand to that person is great. It's fun without spoiling any surprises for those who don't. You could actually make an entire adventure of them trying to get this deciphered. Secretly, of course, because they don't want whoever's deciphering to know what that red spot is. It could be a lot of things. So with game aids such as this is a quick and easy way to kickstart an adventure or the beginning of a campaign. For this reference here, it talks about a Dwarven scouting party who are looking for possible new mines, and they've found a great spot. They're going to be going there to explore. They've, however, stumbled into some trouble and are seeking more help. This should pique the player's interest because they'll be thinking of either gems, jewels, gold, silver, adventure in saving a Dwarven scouting party. A lot of different ways that you can use it to entice your characters to go on an adventure and find out what's at the end of the map. The red spot, of course, shows a treasure chest, so obviously some type of wealth. Could even be just their supplies. So lots of different things that you can use. Now the question of how do you get it into your players' hands, that gets to be a bit of a challenge. There are lots of ways that can happen, all depending on how you're starting your campaign or the adventure, if it isn't part of a campaign but just a adventure. One of those could be depending on where they're meeting. If they're meeting in a tavern, for instance, one of the old tropes. A lot of people knock it, but it works. If they're meeting in a tavern, they could have a patron who looks inquisitively at their adventuring prowess and possibilities and approaches them and says, I was given this from a sturdy dwarf who had wounds and is seeking aid. Can you help? You could have it found in a chest. If they are, for instance, camping beside the road and come across a overturned cart. So lots of different ways to get this into the player's hands. You could even work directly with the player and say part of his background, if he is a scribe or a sage, he came across this in his research or in any type of background scenario where he would have access to maps, letters, anything like that. So getting it into the player's hands is definitely important because that's going to or should kickstart their adventure and should be a great way to get them moving along a road of adventure and possibly high stakes RPG at the table, because they'll be poring over this map, questioning what they could do, where they could camp, what they should be able to find. Should get the creative juices flowing pretty well for them. And having a game aid like this, again, it just brings that theater of mind a little more to life. It makes it a little more tangible for them, and they get a little more invested because now they actually have something from the game. Having that item from the game, generally, that I've found in my background, is they are engaged on a whole new level. So definitely something to think about and something to utilize as much as you can. Of course, you don't want to overdo it with too many maps, too many riddles, too many notes that they have to decipher. Keep it small bits, like a trail of breadcrumbs for them to follow along the story arc. One of the biggest questions I've been asked on these game aids so far has been, how can I make it? So a lot of tutorials out there. I'm not going to rehash it. I will do a shameless plug again that you can purchase goods like this through Green Oaks RPG Game Aids. And we will have a link, of course, down in the comments section. I have not had a whole lot of opportunity to put it in the descriptions, but I will try this week. Now moving on to some non-tangible or some tangible items that are in. Now moving into some items that are great for the tabletop, not necessary for the story, but fantastic game aids all in their own right. There's a lot of discussion about things for how do you hold dice, what do you use to hold your miniatures, do you use miniatures, a lot of items like that. We'll save that discussion for another series, but one of the other items that I like to incorporate in my games, and my players do as well, they actually have taken it to a whole new level and try to outdo each other with tabletop gaming aids, are things like dice box. So with the map, of course, having that dwarven feel to it, this game box here also has, still under construction, but a lot of dwarven themes to it. Of course, it has lots of drawers, one for dice. It does have a lid you can lift up. This is still being worked on, so it's not completed yet. It will have lining so things don't rub, whether it's miniatures rubbing their paint off or dice clacking too loudly. Will be lined with felt. Small game aids like that are fantastic, especially if you have people who are traveling to and from your gaming location to carry their goods. Like I said, dice, miniatures, small markers that you use for whether it's spell effects, whatever you need at the tabletop. Things like this, again, it shows a level of investment on both the game master's part to show that I take this hobby seriously, and I hope you do too. To the players who also concede, yes, we take this seriously. We're willing to invest in it. We're willing to put effort into it and make it a little more real. Game aids like this are a fantastic way to tie in kind of the theme of your adventures or your characters or even your big bad guy. Things like this are great to transport items in. You'll hear lots of arguments, especially from old-time gamers like me, that nothing can beat the Crown Royal bag. However, adding a bit more of the theater into items that you're using to take to the table, it's just a great way, again, to show that level of intense, possibly, but real engagement into the game, into the hobby, and into your tabletop story. This piece here, of course, is very Dwarven themed. This campaign binder that I'm working on for a commission is a Dwarven centric, so very important to bring in those elements to it. However, we've also created ones that are just treasure chest related, elven related, lots of different ideas that you can use for it. Again, depending on what your campaign theme is, what your player characters are playing, and possibly who your big bad guy is. So I'm now talking a little bit about who's bringing what. That was quite a bit of questions that I received on, should the GM provide all this? Do the players provide all this? Do they start a pool for game aids and game aids goods? That really brings up a great question on who's responsible for the overall engagement level and level of depth that the party as a whole and the GM hopes to bring to the table. For my table, I can tell you that I provide a lot of game aids for the players to use in-game. My players themselves bring a lot of the game aids that are more the decorative and game atmosphere enhancing game aids. So it really depends on your dynamic, your table dynamic. If you're wanting a more immersive experience, then you should be able to provide more of the goods. If you're a part-time, whether it's a player or a GM who is just there to get out of the lull and get away from work and have a couple of hours of fun rolling dice, and the immersion isn't as important as you as just the break, it probably would not behoove you to spend a lot of time, effort, money on things that are not going to benefit you. However, over time, you will find that your collection of game aids is going to grow. We do that as a hobby because we enjoy it, whether it's purchasing things and refurbishing them, whether it's creating things of our own. It's part of the hobby that we love. And, of course, it's part of the hobby that we love to share. So it can be kind of competitive to have the best table setup, to have the best character drawings, commissioned work, maps, scrolls, game aids, spell books, you name it. One thing I would caution everybody on is don't feel like you have to jump into it right away. By starting small, you're going to have a better opportunity to grow as you grow. Your collection is going to follow themes that are important to you and your party, and it's going to have a bigger impact into your story. Hope this one has helped. I would love to hear more questions, comments, and concerns, so don't hesitate to comment or email us at greenoaksrpggameaids.com. The link, of course, will be down below in the comments. And make sure you subscribe, follow, like, check us out on Facebook. Again, we definitely want to grow this community and provide opportunities for these types of discussions and goods to more people. So, more information down in the description and comments below. Can't wait to see you again next week. we are going to be talking a little bit more next week about using the campaign story arcs and NPC pieces that are found in our campaign binder. So until next week, hope you enjoyed. Make sure you subscribe, follow, like, and leave comments. Thank you.